Hello, and welcome to Pace to Purpose, where every step leads youth, families, and communities toward hope, healing, and wholeness. I'm Nomi Pace Wallace with Nomi for Youth.
And I'm April Pace Williams with Journey to Live Complete. And we're excited to walk this journey with you.
So, tune in each week as we move hearts and minds towards purpose.
One pace at a time.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to Pace to Purpose. I'm Nomi Pace Wallace, and I'm here with my sister,
April Pace Williams.
and my cousin,
Kenneth Pace.
And so today's topic, we are talking about, the whole month we've been talking about timing. Last week we talked about the weight of the wait. And this week we're saying that there is no more waiting, a timely talk on men's mental health. Now, June is Men's Mental Health Month. So how appropriate the timing of this conversation.
Right.
It's a conversation we don't have enough of in any room, unfortunately.
Right. That's true. Very true.
So, and I think that's probably based off of a lot of stereotypes that particularly men, Black men in particular, have a stereotype of, not being emotional, not being strong, and never showing any type of weakness, never crying,
Right.
never, handling everything.
In general,
Never having a soft space to land.
right. But that's in general for the black family. Period. It's even more so for the Black man, though, because of the stereotypes broadly for men across the board. The men are taught not to show that emotion, not to cry. Like, you considered weak. It's considered weakness.
Yeah.
Yeah, they expect man to be the breadwinner, strong, dominant, in control. Not expecting any emotions, vulnerability, or ask for help. Not appear weak.
Yeah.
If you so
exactly.
That's a large weight, especially in today's society when the systemic systems in place they're still there. So not only do you have to deal with that, you have to deal with those systems which are designed to keep you in your place. And
exactly.
so far it's done pretty. The system is well orchestrated, because when I was coming up, Black folks were 12% of the population, and we're still 12% of the population. That's mathematically incorrect, because we're growing, but we're
right.
And if you base it on, I guess, the penitentiary, which they don't really count as, some states can't count the population of the convicts in their census. Some of them don't. But the population is like 48% Blacks are locked up, and we're 12% of the population. When I first started, I think I told y'all about this. When I started for the state, I was appalled, because I walked in those doors, and those doors closed behind me, and I walked through there and I saw a lot of us, and I'm like, wow, I thought we were 12% of the population.
Yeah, it's definitely disproportionate.
Right.
Definitely disproportionate. And a lot of that leads back to a lot of our young Black men, young Black people are, incarcerated due to untreated mental illnesses. Untreated. That's how it shows up. But they are criminalized instead of provided the help that they need.
Right.
So how do we teach our young Black men how to navigate the system? Because if the system's there, sometimes the best we can do is to help with the tool, or help with some wisdom, or help with a knowledge, a little gem of knowledge. What can we do to say, here's what you need to know? How do we help them to navigate the system?
Right.
With so many challenges like mental illness that you have to address too.
I think having conversations like this, like Kenneth, you were about to touch on earlier, helps to normalize it. Like when we have open conversations about mental health, which is happening a little bit more post COVID, we're having more conversations about mental health across the board, right? Yeah. And so when we start having, especially celebrities,
exactly,
when celebrities start having conversations about that, and we're like, oh, wait a minute,
right?
It's okay for me to get some therapy,
right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That is helping.
Yeah,
I believe that helps.
Yeah, because when Naomi Osaka came out and said it, you had a lot of negative feedback, but she was being serious, and she led by example, because when she played Coco Gauff and she beat Coco Gauff was having a breakdown, crying, and then Naomi offered her to come stand with her. She said, well, I don't take it from your mom. She says, no, it's our moment. She said, I want you right here. And that was the beginning. And the simple fact that she allowed a butterfly to land on her face, and then she stopped the match, walked over, took the butterfly, and let the butterfly go. It's those small things like that. Yeah. When you have more celebrities that are showing their vulnerability, it makes it okay for everybody else.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, like I say, it's forums like this, the stuff that y'all have been doing, and the Black history that I post daily. Joyce DeGruy explains it better than anybody. And when I read her essay on post-traumatic slavery syndrome, I'm like, wow, that is eye-opening, because it just didn't stop after slavery. It continued after slavery, Jim Crow. It's even now in the microaggressions. When the playing field is not even, and you got to start 100 yards back behind everybody else, and then when you catch up, you're still not accepted. That creates a lot of stress.
It creates stress, a lot of mental stress. Yes, it does. Yeah. It does.
Yeah.
And because, so mental health, it can be biological. It can also be triggered through environment. So stressful environments, boy, oh boy.
Yeah.
When you live in them, wake up, live all day in it, go to sleep in it.
But like I said, education is the key.
I have noticed that as far as like women versus men talking about mental illness, I think it's been more of a common thing with women to talk about mental illness, probably because even back in the day, ancient days, what they called mental illness, they called it hysteria. That was based off
associated with us.
So we the only crazy ones for real.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So I think it's more commonplace for women to talk about mental illness, but rarely do you find, you might have Kanye West, but he is atypical in himself, period.
Right.
You don't find as many men that will be vulnerable enough to put themselves out there and talk about, what they're going through. And I just wonder how much I can imagine how hard that is, number one. But I can also wonder how much good it could do if they were able to share more and let younger boys and young men know that they're not alone, because somebody who's made it has been where I've been and I'm there now, but I can get there too. If that conversation could be had and people could be more open about what they're going through, it could only, could it hurt?
No,
possibly, but I think it probably
I think it would be more helpful than hurtful, especially like when you were talking, I was thinking about the churches. That's how I started doing the life coaching and the mental health coaching, was being trained, because there's finally some things being talked about in the church, because that you got a demon. if you quote unquote crazy,
right, right.
and so now it's being talked about more in the church. And so if we have real conversations in the churches, in barbershops, all of these different places, locker rooms, where people are actually talking about it and letting the men know that it's okay. We got to talk about our emotions before we can even get to the mental health part, because men they're not used to showing many emotions besides anger a lot of times, because they have all of that, because they've been silent so much, have so much built up in them. So if we start doing that,
as a child growing up, I came out of a large family, and I can recall the number of times my dad came out and said, "I love you," and that was after I got out of college. So
wow.
when I started having kids, I told my kids every day, "I love you." Every day I tell them, "I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you."
Yeah.
Let them know this. It's okay to tell your kids you love them. To try to get them some kind of emotional bond.
Right.
And if more folks, we got to break that stigma somewhere.
Right.
If you got to start somewhere.
Right.
It's telling them I love you is something big. It's something small, but yet it's big.
It's huge.
Because I wasn't raised like that.
Yeah.
Right.
My dad was one of those ones that he didn't show emotion. I saw my dad have an emotional, and he didn't really show it then. When my oldest brother passed, we went to his funeral in Midland, and his name was Charles Pace Jr. And my dad felt himself getting emotional, so he walked away. And when he did, I followed behind him, and I asked him. I said, "Pops, you all right?" Yeah, I'm all right. I'm all right. But I knew he wasn't. But he didn't. He wanted to be that strong individual. And as I've gotten older, I've embraced my emotions where I'm not with everybody, just folks that are close to me that know me, that I can show the
safe space.
My safe space too, because if you keep it in, man, it'll tear you up.
Yeah, it will.
Yeah. I was having a conversation just the other day, and we were talking about how people teach us either directly or indirect how we want to be in the future. And so your dad, he didn't show it, but he showed you how to be based off of not being the way you needed him to be. So he showed you how to be with your kids, by not showing that emotion. Well, this has been a very good conversation, and we will be right back on GSSL Radio.
And welcome back to Pace to Purpose. And so far we have been talking about no more waiting, a timely talk on men's mental health. So we talked about breaking down stereotypes so that we can make it more, we can normalize the conversation about mental health, right? Especially for our men. And what can we do to destigmatize through education, through examples? And now we're talking about creating safe spaces. We talked a little bit about that before, but how do we create safe spaces for our men, young and old, to be able to talk about the things that they're experiencing, the things they're going through, how they're coping with those things, navigating the world through everything, all of the challenges and obstacles. Everybody needs a voice, and especially our Black men. They need a voice, but we need to figure out how we can make sure that they have safe spaces to do that. How do we do that?
Encouraging open communication, first of all. We've got to let them know it's okay to talk about taboo subjects that the Black community doesn't really want to talk about, and offer a non-judgmental listening ear. We can listen and not judge. Respecting their privacy, the boundaries, encouraging professional help if it's needed.
Right.
Continuing to support them, and utilizing any resource that's available to us.
Yeah.
Right. I think it starts with the home. It starts with reaching parents to create the safe space. But when that doesn't happen, when the stigma is too big for the adults who are stuck in how they were brought up, then we have to target our youth or do that simultaneously, basically. So targeting our youth looks like schools having different programs within them. Programs like Know Me for Youth can be incorporated in schools like we've done before, right, in Caddo Parish, where we have different workshops that they can teach. One that we teach, one being the mental health workshop that we provide. So it's things like that that can help to create safe spaces, because a lot of times children, especially these days, children are teaching their parents how to be.
True. That is true. That is very true. And so many of the concepts that Know Me for Youth teaches, a lot of kids, they haven't been introduced to them, you know. And so when you talk about mental wellness, mental illness, a lot of children, a lot of youth don't have the language to even identify and explain how they're feeling, you know. So you have to, and the conversation needs to be had, though, because before you know it, it's out of hand. It's out of hand, all because they may not have had the language to explain to somebody how they're feeling, you know. As far as creating safe spaces, it is also done through leadership by setting examples. When you are able to, and to me, leadership looks like pulling up your sleeves and doing the same thing as everybody else. Come on, let's get this done. That's what leadership looks like to me. And anytime that you know somebody's on your team, you're going to feel a little more safe. You know, you feel like this person is on your side. This person understands you. Do you think, and Kenneth, I'll ask you directly, in your opinion, do men feel more safe in talking with a female practitioner versus a male practitioner?
I would probably say a male. I don't know if they would feel exposing their vulnerabilities to a female as much as they would a male, because they have more commonality with what a male would, what they're going through.
Exactly.
But in reality, they should feel comfortable talking to anybody that has that title behind their name, because they're just as qualified.
But, that's true. That's true.
But that's just the way the human mind works. You know, we got a lot of barriers to break down before we can, you know, get through.
And there are, I'm sure, women who have mastered the art of breaking down that barrier that might initially exist.
It happens. Exactly. That's what I was saying. Like, women have the same thing, feel the same way sometimes, because like he said, you have that commonality there. But so for that male, female client therapist rapport to be there, a lot of times it happens during couples therapy. They are able, I think they're able to, you know, get the female perspective and help break that barrier, and then you lead into having the individual relationship or therapy session or whatever. I think that is one way that it can happen. But I wanted to touch on what you said about leadership and creating the safe space, because I have a real world example for that. It's not with a male, but it is, you know, my friend from California. I won't call her name. I'm not going to call her out, but my friend from California, you know who I'm talking about, that I met on TikTok. So she's going to work. And she's going to work, and she's going to work some more, right? Doesn't use her leave very often. And so she got an evaluation. And now I've been talking to her because, you know, I'm going, in the midst of being a friend, I'm going to insert some life coaching stuff in there, right? And so I've been telling her, hey, you got to take some time for you. And so later on, she got her evaluation and posted it on social media, because her boss, who was a male, praise God, was like, take some time off, take a mental health day. Like he is very adamant about his employees making sure that they decompress, take time to decompress. And so that was eye-opening for her, because it was in black and white on her evaluation. Like, you do a great job, but you need to take a break. So it's things like that that can definitely help, in the future.
Exactly. Okay, so what role do father figures, mentors, and male role models play in shaping how young men view mental wellness? They have to be aware, because, sometimes an adult male can be a role model and not even know it.
Right.
A young child can be watching him, and he could be setting a good example, or he could be setting a bad example. There's always someone, a little kid who's watching. Always a little kid who's watching. So that's why it's so important to know what we're putting out in the world.
Right.
That's so important.
Yeah, it is, because, you try to set a good example for them to follow. They may not follow it, but at least, you did your part trying to, give them a blueprint on how things are. You prepare them for the good as well as the bad, because everything is not bed of roses.
Yeah.
And especially with black men, you got to, black men, the black race is probably the only race that has a conversation about how to react when you're stopped by the police.
Right.
What other race does that? That's a lot of stress on them. It's a lot of stress on a kid. We got his driver's license and he wants to go for a ride, and and now your daddy gonna say, okay, before you get in the car, this is what I want you to do. If you're stopped, you got to do this, you got to do that.
Yeah, and so a conversation that we need to have with them as well is, how are you feeling? Describe. We need to open up the communication about the mental health as well. Because we'll make sure that they have their physicals, make sure they try out for this and try out for that. But we forget, and sometimes they'll be maybe having a fit, and you have to get called down to the office to go get them in line, and all this, not paying attention here, there, overactive. Okay, well, maybe there's something else going on. Being able to, and families have to be educated on what to look for, and children need to be educated with the language to communicate how they're feeling. If we could put focus on that, I don't know what kind of difference it could make, in the long run. What was that saying? Each one teach one. If you can reach one person,
right,
how big of a difference could you have potentially made?
Right.
Exactly.
I'm always hopeful.
Because think about it, when we were, I think another problem is they diagnosed too many of these kids with ADHD. And as a child, you're going to have a lot of energy. And they cut back on PE. We used to have PE every day.
Right. Yeah.
Hour, 10 minutes a day. So we got to go out and run
and
around
recess.
and burn off all this
recess.
energy.
Yeah.
And now these kids, they have to sit in these classrooms, and all this energy is built up, and they get fidgety, and the parent, and the teacher's like, you need to be still. It's hard to have a child to be still, but they don't. Now that falls on them for not recognizing what these kids' energy level is. But,
I don't even know if it's not recognized. It's just not taking it into consideration. Just really almost dismissing it.
Man, I was thinking about what you were asking about the father figures and the male role models and all of that, because we have to remember, I think if we remember that our children are going to model our behavior, and if you're modeling something, typically they're going to model our behavior, because we talked about how you saw one thing in your father and you did another as an adult, but that is not always the norm. Sometimes we look at things and say, oh, that's how it's supposed to be. This is what strength looks like. Oh, well, this is how I'm running my house with an iron fist, and I'm not showing no emotion. And if we consider that as adults, then we can pass on, like you said, we can have the conversation that it's okay to be vulnerable. That vulnerability is strength, not the opposite. Be vulnerable, that takes some courage.
It takes a whole lot of courage to be vulnerable.
Right. Exactly.
It's easy to shut the door.
Easy to shut up. Right. I ain't gotta talk to you.
Door quick. I have to say nothing.
Exactly. And that's across the board.
Yeah. Communication, man. Communication is key to anything. Right. It's key to anything in life, relationships.
Yeah, that's true.
School.
Very true.
But yeah, we have to encourage healthy conversations. We have to give them permission to be vulnerable. And that's how we create safe spaces. Hey, talk to me,
Yeah, make sure they give themselves permission,
Exactly.
They have to understand that it's okay.
Right.
It's okay.
By talking to them and saying, hey, let's talk about this. I am thankful for the relationship that I have with my boys, because they may not talk a whole lot, but when they need something, or when they need to talk about something, when they need to be vulnerable, they know that they have a safe space with us. So encouraging that gives them the permission to give themselves the permission to be vulnerable.
This has been a great conversation and a very good way to round out our talking about timing and all of that, and the very important subject of men's mental health. Kenneth, thank you very, very much for being with us again. And we do hope that you'll be back again too, right?
Whatever you need, I'm retired, man. I have unless I'm on vacation.
To listen to past episodes, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Pace to Purpose.
That's right. So until next week, be sure to take your journey one intentional step at a time. Join us every Saturday at 2 p.m. on GSSL Radio.